I wanted to share a story about something that happened at my dad's school recently. For context, my dad works as an assistant principal at a high school, and this was his first year there. It's actually been a really positive change for him. His previous school was pretty rough, dealing with overcrowding, drug problems, and a lot of students from low-income families. He had to handle fights almost weekly and was constantly suspending students. But this new school, it's been like night and day. They've only had 2 incidents all year, one involving an autistic student having an episode, and then this wild situation I'm about to tell you about. So here's what went down about a month ago. It all started with what seemed like a minor incident between a bus driver and this entitled teenage girl. From what I understand, either the bus driver accidentally bumped into her while dropping her off, or he called her out for saying something disrespectful. Either way, this girl immediately texted her mom about it, and that's when things started getting crazy. The mom came storming out of her house and started screaming at the bus driver, who wisely just drove away. The next morning, when the bus driver went to pick up the girl, she wasn't there. Instead, her entire family was waiting. Her mom, her older brother, who's like 22, and her sister who's in college. The bus driver opened the door and asked where the girl was. That's when all three of them just barged onto the bus. Remember, these are grown adults boarding a school bus full of kids. What happened next was absolutely insane. The mom started screaming about how dare the bus driver disrespect her daughter. The brother joined in, threatening to teach the bus driver a lesson. They were screaming, throwing around threats, using all kinds of slurs. It was complete chaos. The other kids on the bus were terrified, and as soon as these lunatics finally got off, the bus driver booked it out of there. Here's where these geniuses messed up. They completely forgot about the 4 high-definition cameras with audio recording on every bus in our county. They caught everything. The bus driver went straight to the front office after dropping off the kids. My dad was furious when he saw the footage. He immediately called the school police officer, who brought in additional officers. The principal, knowing my dad's reputation for handling serious situations, gave him full control over the case. My dad didn't waste any time. He called the school system's lawyer, and they got statements from most of the kids on the bus. They decided to press charges against the mom and the brother. The sisters somehow avoided charges, but the other 2 weren't so lucky. The mom was charged with malicious harassment, intimidation, trespassing, and a few other things. The brother, well, he was already on probation for something else, so he was in even deeper trouble. During the trial 2 weeks ago, the mom's lawyer barely even tried to defend her. The evidence was that overwhelming. They didn't even need to show the video footage. Everyone expected she'd get maybe a week in jail, tops. But the judge had other ideas. The judge gave his verdict, scolding the mom for endangering children, threatening an innocent man, and trespassing on school property. He asked her rhetorically if all this was really worth it, just because a bus driver disciplined her daughter. Then he sentenced her to 30 days in jail. But wait, it gets better. The brother, this genius, decided to skip his trial completely. The judge was not amused and immediately ordered a bench warrant for his arrest. They found him hiding at his mom's house the next day, and when they brought him before the judge, he got hit with a 1-year prison sentence for violating probation, skipping his trial, and the original charges. The daughter ended up transferring schools, probably too embarrassed to show her face again. My dad had her switch to a different bus route before that and banned the rest of the family from school grounds. He also gave the bus driver a month of paid time off to recover from the whole ordeal. My dad loves telling this story to everyone he meets. He says it's the perfect example of karma in action. And honestly, I have to agree. The way these entitled people thought they could just terrorize a bus driver and get away with it, only to have it blow up in their faces, priceless. I've been working as an electrician in Berlin for almost 15 years now. Our company is pretty well known in the area. We're the ones with the white Mercedes vans you might see driving around. Recently though, I've been using one of our apprentice cars since my regular van was in for maintenance. It's a smaller vehicle, but it gets the job done. Last Tuesday, I was headed to a job site carrying about 8,000 euros worth of specialty lamps with glass covers. These weren't your regular Home Depot lights. We're talking high-end, custom-made pieces for a luxury apartment complex. I was driving through downtown Berlin, being extra careful because of my precious cargo, when suddenly, bam! This shiny black BMW slammed right into the side of my car. The impact was so hard it sent some of my boxes flying around inside. The BMW driver got out of his car and he was wearing what looked like a €2,000 suit and reeked of alcohol even from a few feet away. He immediately tried to handle things unofficially, offering me €500 to forget the whole thing happened. I told him I needed to call the police because there was significant damage. He then tried to increase his offer to €1,000, trying to convince me to let it go. I already had my phone out dialing the police. When he saw this, his face turned red. He tried to intimidate me by asking if I knew who he was. Without waiting for my response, he ran back to his BMW and sped off. What he didn't realize was that the impact had knocked his license plate clean off, and it was now stuck to my car's bumper. About 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. They took one look at the license plate stuck to my bumper and immediately radioed it in. One officer commented that this would make their job much easier, then asked if I had checked my cargo. When I opened the back, my heart sank. Almost all the glass covers were shattered. These were custom-made pieces that would take weeks to replace. The police took statements from me and several bystanders who had witnessed everything. One of them had even recorded the guy offering me money on their phone. About 15 minutes later, we got word that they'd caught him just a few blocks away. He'd apparently crashed into a street sign while trying to escape. When I called my boss to explain the situation, instead of being upset, he was determined to make this guy pay for every cent of damage. We dealt with entitled people before, but this guy was something else. The court hearing was a thing of beauty. Not only did they get him for causing the accident and destroying thousands of euros worth of equipment, but it turned out he was driving without a license, was well over the legal alcohol limit, had resisted arrest when they caught him, and his car hadn't passed inspection in 3 years. My boss brought in our company lawyer, who presented everything so professionally that the judge was visibly annoyed with the rich guy's excuses. The rich guy tried to defend himself by saying he was just trying to handle things privately and had offered to pay for damages. Our company lawyer quickly pointed out that he had only offered €1,000 for €8,000 worth of damage before fleeing the scene while intoxicated. The judge wasn't impressed with his attitude either. She announced the total damages would be €12,000, including fines, plus 200 hours of community service and a 2-year driving suspension. The rich guy protested, claiming he needed his car for work, but the judge shut him down by suggesting he should have thought about that before driving under the influence without a license or valid inspection. He had to write us a check right there in the courthouse. Our lawyer made sure of that. Turns out he was some hotshot real estate agent who thought he was above the law. Well, not anymore. I've worked in the restaurant industry for almost a decade, and while most customers are great, there's always that one person who makes everyone's life difficult. For me, it was this middle-aged woman who came to our family-owned Italian restaurant every Friday evening without fail. Let's just say she acted so entitled that the staff nicknamed her Karen behind her back. For context, I started working at this restaurant right after my parents passed away in a car accident 3 years ago. My aunt owned the place, and she gave me a job when I needed it most. I started as a busboy and worked my way up to being a server. The restaurant became like a second home to me, and the staff became my family. Karen would always demand the same corner booth, even if other customers were already seated there. She'd complain about everything: the temperature, the lighting, the music, you name it. But my aunt told us to tolerate her because she was a big spender who brought in business associates. One Friday, things reached a breaking point. We were completely booked for a charity event, and we had called all our regulars 2 weeks in advance to let them know. Karen didn't answer her phone, and her voicemail was full. When she walked in that evening, she exploded at the sight of the charity event setup. She immediately demanded to know what was happening and where her table was. I tried to explain that we had attempted to reach her and that we were hosting a charity event for children with cancer that night. She rudely responded that she didn't care if it was for the Queen of England herself, declaring that she'd been coming here every Friday for 5 years, and this was unacceptable. She then stormed over to a table where a family with a clearly ill child was sitting. She demanded they move, claiming it was her regular table. The mother, looking shocked, explained that they were there for the charity event and that her daughter was going through chemotherapy. Karen dismissively told them that wasn't her problem, explaining that she brings important clients there and they could sit somewhere else. At this point, my aunt came out from the kitchen after hearing the commotion. She asked what the problem was, and Karen immediately complained that her incompetent staff had given away her table, demanding that these people be moved immediately. My aunt's face turned serious. I'd never seen her look so stern. My aunt told Karen that she had tolerated her behavior for years because she believed everyone deserves a chance, but trying to remove a sick child from a charity event crossed the line. Karen responded with outrage, bringing up how much money she spent there. My aunt simply told her she wasn't welcome at the establishment anymore and asked her to leave. Karen threatened to ruin us and post reviews everywhere. My aunt just smiled and told her that she would post the security footage of Karen trying to remove a child with cancer from a charity event, suggesting her business associates would love to see that. Karen's face went pale. She looked around and noticed several people recording with their phones. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out. The following week, we received a letter from her workplace. Apparently, the videos had made their way to her company's board of directors. She was suspended pending an investigation because the incident had damaged their company's reputation. Several of her business associates sent us apology letters and continued to dine with us, saying they'd only come before because she insisted. The charity event was a huge success, raising over $50,000 for children's cancer research. The little girl and her family became regulars at our restaurant, and my aunt always gave them their meals on the house. We even started doing monthly charity events, which brought in more business than Karen ever did. So, yeah, losing one rude customer led to gaining an entire community's support. I used to spend countless weekends at my grandparents' house on Walnut Avenue in West Seattle. That house held so many memories. The smell of my grandmother's apple pie wafting through the kitchen, my grandfather teaching me how to tend to his prized rose garden, and those summer evenings spent on the porch watching the sunset over the Seattle skyline. When both my grandparents passed away within months of each other last year, it hit our family hard. I had secretly hoped to buy the house myself, but with my modest teacher's salary, there was no way I could afford it. The estate planner made it clear the house needed to be sold, and the proceeds divided among all the surviving relatives. I was put in charge of handling the sale since I lived closest and knew the property best. The estate planner estimated we could get around $350,000 for it, which seemed low considering the prime location and unobstructed view of Seattle. But the market in the late 90s was different. She warned us it might take some time to find the right buyer. I remembered the lady who lived across the street had mentioned wanting to buy the property a few years back. She was worried about developers buying it and building a 3-story complex that would block her view. So I decided to be neighborly and give her first dibs. When I knocked on her door that afternoon, she answered with a scowl that should have been my first warning. I politely told her about selling my grandparents' house and reminded her of her previous interest. Karen asked about the price, and when I told her the estate planner's suggestion of $350,000, she laughed condescendingly. She offered $250,000, claiming she was being generous. I declined politely, explaining we needed to get fair market value even if it took longer to sell. That's when Karen insulted me, saying I was stupid to think anyone would pay that much for the old house and that I clearly knew nothing about real estate. Her words stung, especially since this was about my grandparents' beloved home. Instead of arguing, I just turned and walked away. But her attitude lit a fire under me. I knew the property's worth, and I wasn't about to let her insult both my intelligence and my grandparents' home. The next morning, I started knocking on doors in the neighborhood. The first few houses were either not interested or not in a position to buy, but the fifth door I knocked on changed everything. The couple who answered were immediately interested. They had been looking to downsize from their larger home a few blocks away. When I stated the asking price of $350,000, the husband surprised me by saying it was actually very reasonable for this location. I showed them around that same afternoon. They fell in love with the house immediately, especially the garden my grandfather had maintained so meticulously. By the end of the week, we had a signed contract, and I even received a commission for handling the sale directly. That's when my phone rang. It was Karen from across the street. She was furious, demanding to know how I dared to sell the house without giving her another chance, claiming she would have matched the price. I reminded her that just days ago she had called me stupid for asking that much. When she tried to defend herself by saying she was just negotiating, I cut her off and told her that her attitude had motivated me to sell it to anyone but her just to prove her wrong. The new owners moved in a month later. They kept my grandfather's garden, added some beautiful landscaping of their own, and even invited the whole neighborhood over for a housewarming party. Everyone came, except Karen, who now had to live with the daily reminder that her attempt to take advantage of our situation had backfired spectacularly. A few years later, Karen tried to sell her own house. She'd listed it for an astronomical price, claiming the premium Seattle view made it worth far more than market value. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She'd tried to lowball us on our property, but now expected top dollar for her own. Her attempts to sell kept failing, and during one of her open houses, she made the mistake of ranting to a potential buyer about how she should have owned both properties. Word spread among house hunters to avoid her house. She eventually sold for less than she'd paid originally and moved to a condo in Tacoma. The people who bought her house turned out to be a lovely retired couple who joined in the neighborhood's social life. They became great friends with my grandparents' house's owners, and together they started an annual garden tour that has become a local tradition. The new owners recently reached out to me asking for old photos of my grandfather's original garden layout. They're planning a special tribute section featuring heritage roses from his time. Next month, I'm going back to help them plant some cuttings from my grandfather's original bushes that I've been nurturing in my own garden. Started with that commission I earned from the sale.